Welcome to The Road to Innovation, powered by the Kleinert Foundation. On each episode, we delve into innovative solutions to society's most pressing issues like sex trafficking, homelessness, and poverty. We hope that with each conversation, you'll be inspired to take actionable steps towards social change. Here's your host, Hannah Rabelais from the Kleinert Foundation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Road to Innovation podcast powered by the Childcare Foundation. We are so grateful to have Ms. Roslyn Dawson Thompson, President and CEO of the Texas Women's Foundation with us today. Roslyn, I am so excited to have this conversation with you and to really dive deep in what is happening across our state to women and girls. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your time with us and our listeners.
Well, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Yes. Well, for those who are not familiar with the Texas Women's Foundation, do you mind just giving a brief history and the mission of Texas Women's Foundation?
Well, of course not. I'd be happy to. Texas Women's Foundation was originally chartered as Dallas Women's Foundation in 1985, and we were chartered as an organization, community-supported organization, that would raise funds to benefit organizations serving women and girls. And the reason for that was that at the time, all of the philanthropy that was targeted to women and girls in the U.S. accounted for 3% of total philanthropy, 3%, which was, a kind of a compelling reason to get started. We've continued to fund and support organizations benefiting women and girls for all these years. But sadly, a most recent study last year showed that overall philanthropy in the U.S. targeted to women and girls has slipped to 1.6%. So there's still a lot of work to do and a lot of needs to fulfill, and that's what we work to do.
Well, thank you. I mean, what you and your staff are doing is so important. And those statistics just blow my mind. I like something that I pulled off of your website. So you invest in economic security for women and girls. And on your website, it says there's been a 51% reduction in the poverty rate of Texas women could be realized if women were paid comparably to men. And of all philanthropic dollars spent, only 12% goes to women and girls globally and only 4% nationally. So why do you invest in economic security? And also, you also invest in women's leadership. Can you talk about those two initiatives that you'll have?
Of course. And that 4% is the one that slid to 1.6.
Okay, thank you.
Breaks my heart. But no, the reason that we really focused on those two areas is that we had done research on the status of women in Texas for quite a long time. And two things elevated in really profound ways. The first was that when little boys and little girls are born, they are pretty much at the same level in the poverty, state. They're at the same level when they're born to the age of 6. It starts edging up for girls between 6 and 12, but between 12 and 18, it shoots up the number of girls that find themselves in poverty. And over the age of 18, it goes up yet again, and it continues the rest of a girl's or woman's life. So what we observed in our own research was the fact that women are disproportionately impacted by poverty. Women in Texas wear the face of poverty like they do in every other country in the world, and that we had to do something about trying to rectify the disparities affecting women's long-term economic stability. So that was the genesis of the Economic Security Initiative. How could we not focus on that? Then on the other side, leadership. You say, well, we've been working in helping grassroots leadership efforts for girls and women for a very long time. But
what does that mean? Can you just talk about grassroots leadership?
Yeah, that would be like community organizing, helping women in neighborhoods organize around, advocating for their children, advocating for better schools. So kind of at the grassroots, we've been doing a good bit of work for decades around women's leadership. But we hadn't looked up the pyramid because, again, philanthropy typically focuses on the grassroots as opposed to the upper echelons of the pyramid. But we began to realize if we didn't focus on women's leadership across the entire spectrum, we were never going to see the changes we hoped for, because without more women in decision-making roles, without more women in elected office, we will not see these disparities change. So the two, really, we think of economic security and leadership as kind of two sides of the same coin. It's like one side and the other, because one is very much interdependent upon the other. Women will get stronger, better economically when there are more women helping make those decisions. And goodness knows you can see that when you do look at the research that Catalyst has done for 20 years about, goodness gracious, how amazing when you have like more than 30% women in the senior ranks of a company, there's less pay discrimination. Whoa, I mean, it's like, this should not be rocket science,
Right.
but, in fact, we know those things are very, very much linked.
Yeah, and another statistic I pulled off your website says while 52% of all professional jobs are held by women, only 14.6% of executive positions are held by women. Best estimates indicate that gender pay equity will not be achieved in Texas until 2049.
I know, isn't that depressing?
I mean, I don't know how old I will be. I mean, oh my gosh. Wow. So the work you're doing is so important.
Alive when we finally reach it. But that's it's a tragic statement because we, again, hold so many positions in the workforce. 62% of Texas moms are in the paid workforce, 54% of the, professional positions held by women. But it's that fall off that happens, from the time that you enter the workforce, you gain your first positions, and then, whether it's the factor of having, stepping back for having children for a period of time, whatever the factors are. But I honestly believe that more than the self-imposed factors, because indeed we're the only ones that can have children. So, that the imposed factors on women in the workforce have got to change. Our perception of what a parity is in the workforce has got to change, because most of the rewards within the workforce systems have been geared to reward male behavior. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to sort of take a whole new look at what does it mean? What does work life mean? And I think in a very ironic, twist of fate, that COVID is revealing some amazing things about the disparities in what our expectations of women are, whether they're full-time working women, and also the expectations that they are to be the dominant caregiver in the home as well. And somehow that balance, I think, needs to be rebalanced in a healthier new world.
Yes. And the teacher apparently now, I mean, we're in multiple children sometimes too, like women. I mean, we have really shined a light on what all we do in the home. And it definitely has been taken for granted for so long. So yes, unfortunately, it took a global pandemic to really shine the light to get some people's attention. But I am grateful that is one positive thing, that it is really bringing awareness to what all women do for our city, our country, our state, and just in society in general. We are the caretakers. We do take on a lot. We have so many different roles, and we need to reevaluate what it means to be a woman in the workforce. So I'm just so appreciative of y'all. I'm really taking this charge in our city, in our state, and clearly across the country. So that's perfect. So I definitely wanted to ask you, so how has COVID-19 impacted your organization? Because I know it has in so many different levels. So please just kind of share what y'all been up to since the pandemic started.
Of course. And, I think we, like everyone else, certainly did not see this coming. And so our first reaction was literally to try to take care of our own in two different ways. One was the grantee partners that are our longstanding, wonderful, folks that we've worked with all these years. We knew that the first thing we could do that would be the right thing to do would be to ask our grantees that had programmatic grants from us if they would like to convert that to general operating, because the whole nonprofit sector is at risk right now in terms of funding. We too, had a large fundraiser that we had to cancel. So, like we're community supported, much like the nonprofits that we in turn support. So it did have an economic impact on us. But on the larger scale, we have this incredible team of wonderful, committed, dedicated, brilliant women that are part of the staff. And I just was bound and determined that we would find a way that we would not have to let anyone go. Yes. And so we went through all the crazy scenario planning that you do when you don't have a clue what's going to be in the future. But we came up with a scheme that we felt like would take care of our own and would also take care of our grantees. And through that was born this thing we call the Resilience Fund. And it is to both protect the resilience of our agency and being able to meet those needs, and in protecting the resilience of the nonprofits that we've worked with for decades. Some really amazing and powerful stories have come from that whole reality, not only from our own staff and what they're dealing with in the, yes, how can I work full-time and teach my 3-year-old, my 5-year-old, my 7-year-old, my 9-year-old, and all of those other things you alluded to a minute ago. But more than that, the reveal that this whole COVID circumstance has made is that 63% of our minimum wage workers in North Texas and in the state are women. That means muchly at or a little below, a little above minimum wage. Who went first? Those women. Whose jobs disappeared first? It was theirs. Whose childcare disappeared? It was theirs. So the New York Times recently called this a she session, that this is not a recession that is being prompted by COVID-19, but in fact is a she session, because the brunt of what women have taken throughout this whole pandemic. And we certainly see it in North Texas. We see it across the state. The non-essential workers who literally, hold up the backbone of so much of our economy, were the first ones out, and they will be the ones that will take the longest to recover. So our commitment, Hannah, is to try to not just address those immediate needs, which God love everyone in this community and across the state that have been so generous in supporting those immediate needs. But for this population, we can look ahead and see that when rent protections have lifted and eviction protections have lifted, and we're still stumbling our way toward a viable economy, that's the population that will still be bearing the brunt. And that's who we need to hold our fodder for, to make sure that we can support these women and families, not just today, but 3 months from now, 9 months from now, a year from now. This will be a long, long road for those women, lower income women, minimum wage working women and their families. And we are downright dedicated to making sure we'll be with them every step of the way.
Well, thank you. Because that's something that we don't think about. We don't know what the long-term economic effects will be. And I think something that you brought up during your virtual viewpoint event, and you talked about childcare, and that really opened my eyes, because that's something I personally don't have children, so I didn't have to have that struggle. But yeah, when you're an essential worker, especially nurses, and you're a single mom, and a lot of childcare facilities are closed, or even if they're open, how do you risk your child getting exposed? You just don't know what other children will bring into the facility as well. But that was just something that opened my eyes, was like, I've never thought about childcare for a single mom, how important that is. And if you can't go to work, how are you supposed to pay, for food and rent and all these things? It was just like the compounding, oh my gosh, the effects of what this pandemic has brought onto women is just mind-blowing. And yes, we have to do better. We have to invest more, and we have to have more support for women and girls in our country, in our state. So I appreciate you guys really bringing those to light, and I think y'all's virtual events are incredible. And do you have any more coming up that our listeners can tune into?
We do. Yes, please do. On June 16th at 10 in the morning, we will be rolling out our latest edition of Economic Issues for Women in Texas. This is our statewide study. And who knew that it would be so pertinent in this particular moment? But the things that the study reveals, both the demographic shift in the state, which is even more profound than it was 3 years ago when the last edition of the study came. I like to say that one of my favorite statistics right now is that of all women in the state of Texas, ages 15 to 24, 68% are women of color. So basically, the study shows if you're under the age of 25 in Texas and you're female, you are dominantly a woman of color. And if that is indeed the case, you're also part of this lower income, sadly, unfortunately, because there's an intersectionality between race, gender, class, and pay that, we see over and over again played out, that we observe the acute realities that are being faced by women of color with families in the state of Texas. And that study will be revealed on June 16th, and would invite everybody to tune in. It'll be a big Zoom call, because the information that's there really will carry us forward into, I hope, a new framework of decision making around childcare, around housing affordability, around educational attainment and access, and finally also around health insurance, because those 4 building blocks are absolutely critical if we're going to let Texas women not just survive but thrive.
Exactly. Do you have any leadership advice for leaders who are leading organizations during this COVID-19 pandemic? I just cannot imagine the weight on your shoulders right now, having a staff, having an organization who has lost their, one of their main fundraisers during this season. Like, how have you navigated this crisis? And please share any insights or any advice for everyone who's listening, even, non-traditional leaders, anybody I'm sure could have some advice. I know I need it right now.
No, I think this has been a test of all of us, a great test to say, can you tolerate uncertainty? And the ability to lead in uncertain times is it's a challenge to any leader to say, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. And then to have to admit to those who look to you for solutions, I don't really know what's going to happen. But what I do know, and I think has helped me, and hopefully it's helped the people that I work with, is that I do know we are among the lucky ones. And because we are among the lucky ones, we have our mission, we have our health, we have one another, and we have so much to be grateful for. And we need to keep that top of mind and understand that it is that faith in the future that will carry us through the present. And I, for one, absolutely believe that this is an opportunity for us to relook at our world with a new set of eyes. We look at our own choices and the choices that we've made or allowed to be made for us, and that we can reframe our future in a very positive and beautiful way. I'm really hokey. I mean, I can't help it. This is just part of my personality. But, when I saw the little pictures of dolphins in the canals in Venice, when I see the smog lifted from cities that you haven't been able to see for decades, when you see even some of the small but so heartening things happening, when one neighbor is helping another, when neighborhoods are coming together, it begins to obviate some of the terrible and disastrous consequences we're also witnessing. So I guess focusing on that future that we all have the power to shape and believing that we can. That's my only advice.
Well, that's good advice, because I think so many people are wanting to go back to, let's go back to normal. The normal that was before COVID was not working for most people, unfortunately. So I'm hoping and praying. I really think, again, like we talked about in the beginning, that this pandemic has really shined a light on a lot of things that have been going on for a very, very long time. This is not new news, but to some people it was. So I'm hopeful too that we are seeing, like, hey, when we pause and take a moment to reflect, and we will definitely see more things, hopefully progress in the right way, and especially for women and girls. So let's go back to the Resilience Fund. I want to brag on y'all because y'all have done something so incredible. In April, through the Resilience Fund and the generosity of your donors, you all distributed $320,768 in grants aimed at relief for low-income and marginalized women, girls, and families. 86% of those beneficiaries of the April Resilience Fund grants are for women and girls of color, and 57%, of the April Resilience Fund grantee organizations are led by people of color. How important is that for the work that you are doing? And is there any insights you have that through the grant process or the application process, any kind of things that were revealed to you during the granting application?
Well, I think, one reason we wanted to call out the focus on people of color is just what I said about the demographics of our state. And also an important consideration for all of us that perhaps traditional philanthropy, top-down philanthropy, is not always the right answer either. And so part of what has been revealed to us through the Resilience Fund and through the work we've been doing, particularly in the last 3 or 4 years, of looking at how things come up from community instead of how things go down to community. We've been trying to retool our approach to philanthropy to be responsive and in partnership in much more authentic and I hope intentional ways. And the Resilience Fund is, I hope, a reflection of that. What we've seen is no surprise because the headlines show it in virtually every news story we see, a huge increase in domestic violence and child abuse is ongoing in the course of this because folks are basically imprisoned with their abusers. So much of the requests for support that have been made through the Resilience Fund have been for housing supports, shelter supports, ability to take people out of terrible situations and put them in a place of safety. That's been a high area of concern. Similarly, housing stability is another super scary thing that we talked about a moment ago, that if you were already on the margins and then you lost your job and then your kids are home with you and then now you can't pay the rent and you can't buy food, housing instability is emerging as an enormous ongoing need for that. And so we in fact have started a whole interior initiative within Resilience strictly around housing instability and trying to address that because it's going to be material now and it's going to continue to be material going forward. Another thing, which comes as no surprise since we're all going a little crazy with this, being kept apart, being sheltered in place, are mental health issues. And the need for greater mental health supports across the whole population, the entire population, but particularly among the population that is most challenged economically, most challenged with being lack of resources. So those themes have emerged and continue to emerge as we look at what happens as we go forward. The tragic truth is, I don't remember which pope said it, but the poor will always be with us. But the sheer fact is, who gets hurt first gets hurt longest. And in our case, in North Texas and across the state, those with the least amount of resources are the most impacted. Can we make everybody whole? Not all at once, but can we find ways to ensure that those who have a hold on now can keep it is a very important consideration. Yes. I mean, don't let anybody else slip under the water. So we're looking very closely at how interventions at the right time and right moment can maybe preclude a worse circumstance for women and girls and families.
I just am so curious especially when school comes back into session, whenever that looks like. I'm really curious what the effects will be. And yeah, when you're saying the rent evictions will be lifted, we've already seen that in Houston's already starting to happen, unfortunately, in other cities across our country. But I don't know really what else to say. It's just like, oh, it just feels so heavy. And it just makes me so sad, especially being a young woman, seeing what this will cause, 20 years down the road if we don't make sure that people are protected and taken care of. So again, I can't thank you enough for what you and your team are doing. And if you want to learn more, there's some really, I wish we could talk more about what's on your website. You have such great resources and tools. So for our listeners, please visit their website to kind of dive deeper into this information. There's a lot of great reports on y'all's website. So how can we best support women and girls during this time right now?
Well, I think there's several ways. Obviously, financially is great. It is a great thing to help, through our resilience fund, through the North Texas Cares Fund, through any means that you feel move you. It's important to do that, but I think it's important not to lose sight of the fact that the future is ahead of us. And so we would encourage, everybody who cares about the future of women and girls to join our Army of Advocates. Part of what we're doing with this research rollout in June is to position a platform of policies and practices that can be changed, that must be changed, so that we can move forward in a more equitable society and a more equitable world. So, what can people do? We can all be advocates. Not every single one of us has a vote. Every single one of us has a mouth.
Amen. Mm-hmm.
Let's use them, because now is the moment. We have the opportunity to reshape our world by what we advocate for, what we support, what we believe in. So you can help girls and women now. You can help them in the future, both by resourcing them through contributions and by advocating for them and for the policies and practices that will make this a fair and equitable society. And we've all got the power to do that.
I love that. I love using your voice. And I think, people forget the power of social media. Even sharing something, in my opinion, goes a long way. Like that's how I learn most of my things. Like my friends will share something. I'm like, I had no idea. Okay, let me do some more research. And so the power of the individual voice is so strong.
It is, and maybe even stronger now.
And November is coming up, y'all. So yes, vote. No matter, what your stance is, vote. We have that right. Exercise it, especially for women. We haven't always had this right, especially for being a young woman. I'm like, I was born into a society where I had a lot more rights than most women before me. So please exercise your right to vote. How can people get involved with you guys right now? I know a lot of things are probably still virtual. Who knows when we'll actually get to meet together in person. So how can people get involved with you guys during this time?
Well, thank you. We do have a lot of virtual content that we're, putting out into the world, and we would love for everybody to participate in that. So again, start in June. There'll be two particular opportunities. One is the research rollout on June 16th. The other is on June 24th, when we'll again feature one of our Mara Women Helping Women Award winners, this time Dana Blankenship. But we have 6 of those events. One was this morning, and then the other 5 will flow through June, July, and August. That are opportunities to see women leaders in action that are absolute powerhouses and amazing women. With the rollout of our research, there's also a website attendant to it that has the stories of Texas women, each one impacted by one of those building blocks, what she had or what she did not have, that has affected her life's journey. It's very real, it's very timely, and I think can form something for all of us to advocate for and around. So really you can do 3 things. You can join our Army of Advocates, go on the website, txwf.org, and sign up. You'll get all the scoop about what the advocacy platform is and opportunities to raise your voice. You can join our resilience fund at any level, any dollar, every single dollar matters, and be part of the solution that we're trying to affect for women and girls. And finally, we have a 19 society, so named because we had 19 awesome founders. They were as diverse as this economy today, of every political persuasion, every kind of orientation, every kind of political, financial, and social, ethnic, and cultural the whole gamut. And those 19 founders created our organization. Therefore, the 19 Society is our membership society. All are welcome, and we would love to have as broad a base as we possibly can under this big tent we try to have.
Wonderful. Well, I wish we had one more hour. I felt like we barely just scratched the surface here. But is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to share with our listeners?
Well, I think just my little mantra, as I said, is to realize that everybody is affected by this. There's not a single person, no matter how high or high low, that is not affected by what's happening in our world today. And so since we are all affected, let's be respectful of one another and know that we all feel these impacts. But let's also embrace the positive and know that we truly have the power to change the future if we take those actions today. So I encourage all of us to not put that banner down. Let's take it up and let's go forward.
And mic drop. Roslyn, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for sharing just the wealth of knowledge you have. And I'm just so grateful for you and your team and the work that you're doing and championing, women, just empowering women and girls in our state. And I just want to thank our listeners too. I know there are several podcasts out there, and there's, you can spend your 30 minutes doing something else. I appreciate you all listening to us and just being able to share this information with the world. So everyone, have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for tuning in to the Road to Innovation podcast powered by the Kleiner Foundation.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of The Road to Innovation, powered by the Kleiner Foundation. If you'd like to learn more about today's social innovator, please visit kleinertfdn.org or the podcast website at theroadtoinnovation.com.